Good morning. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Sorry for starting late, but we had a busy meeting with the open source committee earlier. So I'm sharing today because Councilmember Benoit cannot attend. Do we have Senator Delgado with us? I see the table, but I don't see anyone there.
She wasn't scheduled to come.
All right.
PTO.
So it will be me alone. I alone will be attending this meeting. So we have all information items. We don't need to. We're not going to have to vote on any particular item, but they're really good information items. So we'll start with the food waste diversion. Michael Cloud. Great. With your report. Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mayor. As you know, my name is Mike Krause. I'm the Planning and Rules Manager here at South Coast AQMD. Just so you know, I'm going to be giving a presentation for the directive of the board to discuss the impacts from food waste diversion as it would potentially impact our Rule 1118.1, or non-refinery oil rule. After me, Al Baez, a program supervisor, will be evaluating a similar thing, but the impacts on our best available control technology or BACT guidelines. Okay. So a year ago, the board did adopt our Rule 1118. Also back in 2016, the state passed a bill that was focusing on reducing greenhouse gas, specifically methane emissions from landfills, by requesting a goal for the state to divert organic waste from landfills into an alternative location. Okay, and so during our rule development, it was raised that some of these potential alternative locations could have impacts on ammonia and NOx emissions. So the board directed staff to go ahead and let's do a little exploration and learn about that. So it started out with some case studies that the stakeholders provided to us. And remember, anaerobic digestion is the biological process by which microorganisms break down biodegradable material in absence of oxygen. What it does is it creates a byproduct that's called biogas. And of course, the biogas can be used for electricity and heating. It's a natural gas, renewable natural gas. It can be a transportation fuel, etc. So all good things. And so these processes that we're looking at, all we're dealing with digestion. But there are different forms of digestion. As we dig a little deeper here, I'm not going to read the slides, but basically there are different styles that we determined of these case studies. One of them, for example, put it in what they call in vessel, sort of like it means it's not open, right? And then these buildup of the ammonia that NOx emissions are occurring, and then you have to flare all of that, right? So it's not really, great. That particular process is not common, and we don't have it here in our region. Then there's the type that cranks up the temperature, so high temperature, they call it thermo, the Greek word for hot, right? And in those cases, however, they were doing it because they were burning off things like animal waste and dairy waste. We don't have dairies in our region, and those types of processes wouldn't really be affected by the Senate bill, and I'll highlight that in a moment. And the third one is this different type where they do this pre-treatment. Again, not a common process and nothing that we have in our region. As a way of reminder for that resolution language, it was asked for us to look at the impacts from that Senate bill and to meet with CAPCOA, CalRecycle, there's the California Association of Sanitation Agencies, or SCAP, etc. So we did just that. That process started right after our board meeting because there happened to be a methane conference. So we had staff go attend the methane conference. They met with SCAP, folks that were there, started a conversation. We also, in parallel, did site visits. We did that with the ALS group, so you'll be hearing again from him next. He'll go more specific about some of those visits. And we also had 2 working groups, with the second working group actually having a presentation from CalRecycle on the specifics of the Senate bill. So let's dive a little deeper into that Senate bill. I know we all talk about food waste, but technically the Senate bill actually was for solid organic waste. So when we talk about solid organic waste, we're not talking just about food. It could also be green waste, it could be wood, paper, those sorts of things. And again, the goal was to try to reduce those greenhouse gases as part of our state goal, moving those into alternative locations. To the right there, I listed some of those. So not just anaerobic digestion, but it could also be composting and recycling, chicken grinding, etc. For the goals of the state, by the way, as a point of reference, this year they're trying to look to get the state to reduce 50% of those organic wastes from the landfill, and in the future in 2025, 75%. Now, what are the factors that increase these NOx? Well, basically it's pretty simple. The ammonia that builds up in the digester gas converts into the nitrogen oxide emissions. The major areas that we're seeing that happening is high protein waste streams and also in these advanced digestion processes. So what are the waste streams? So there's two different types of the waste streams that are currently occurring. And again, this was all new to us actually. It was a really learning experience, so I'm glad the board directed us that to look into this. One of those waste streams is dealing with this high protein waste. So your meats and cheeses, sometimes your fats, oils, greases, but those are actually not even going to the landfill. You're not legally allowed to send them to the landfill anyway to begin with, so they're not even part of that Senate bill. There might be some issues with those in the digestion process, but not exactly directed with the Senate bill. But there are some organic wastes that we do need to focus in on when looking at this sort of transition. And those do go to the landfill, and I listed those there, coming from the residences. However, those tend to be low protein, but sometimes you will have your scraps, shall we say, that do that do go to the landfill currently. And again, those would be impacted by the Senate bill. On the area of the digestion side, I want to kind of break this up because it's really important. On the upper end there is what we're looking at when it comes to these advanced digestions. Again, those are the ones that the case studies are really pulling from. We have 3 facilities that do advanced digestion in our region. However, they're all meeting our current rule NOx limits. They happen to not be at this point in time digesting food waste. This is primarily, wastewater treatment, right? So toilets and sinks, as we would say, right? And then the lower half is more of your traditional, conventional digestion. We have 33 facilities in our region doing that processes. I believe Al will clarify this, but I believe about 5 of those currently are dealing with food waste. And again, all of those facilities are currently meeting our limits. Okay, so what do we have in summary? So we've looked at the case studies that were provided to us. Again, not really applicable to any of the processes that are currently used in our region. There are the high waste ones, but again, most of those are going to alternative locations like rendering plants. There are, again, advanced digestion processes, but of the 3 facilities, again, complying with our current rules. And to highlight again that those that are dealing with food waste, they also are meeting our NOx limits in our flare rule. I think in the future, I think it's important to emphasize that this is all still ongoing, right? So municipalities will be making these tough decisions on how they're planning to do this diversion. And again, there's options out there that the state looked at. That's what Cal Recycle wanted to highlight for us. Digestion isn't the only, pathway. But if they do choose that, or they do choose to do high temperatures, or they do find themselves, or they're doing their engineering design, they're making those smart decisions, they need to be looking at those potential impacts in the future. And of course, like with anything, how they're going to handle that and deal with it. In this particular case, we feel that when it comes to the ammonia, they need to possibly doing some kind of ammonia controls. And that technology exists. So our recommendation at this point is to retain our limits in our Rule 1118.1 because we just don't really have much justification or proofing at this point that there needs to be some kind of increase. And even if we didn't, we wouldn't be any proofing on what that would be, right? But we do want to maintain, hope to continue the monitoring, how those decisions are being made, what's happening out there in the field, and then possibly to continue doing things like site source tests and things like that. We learn more specifics.
So one thing I wanted to ask, as a presentation was made at SCAG a couple of months ago about 1383. And so we have counties and cities at SCAG.
Sure. And
the presentation was about the increasing obligations that are going to be placed on local government for recycling and organic waste diversion.
Those goals, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess we would expect that cities and counties are going to ramp up what they have to do pretty soon. And it's not only residential recycling, but it's commercial recycling. I mean, businesses, restaurants, et cetera, in their areas are going to have to ramp up. So my question to you is, how do those two things go together? Do we need to be looking to see what municipal governments are doing and local governments, or how are we going to react to these things?
Right, sure. I mean, clearly we're not, our agency ourselves are not making those important decisions. The municipalities will be making those decisions. Absolutely, that's part of our monitoring that we feel we need to continue, noticing, because again, once those decisions are made, then we'll have a clearer picture on whether they're doing this, the conventional digestion, or whether they are they're choosing to do advanced. By the way, the advantages of those thermophilic processes is that it's just a faster digestion process, right? And they call it 1 stage versus 2, so it could be kind of quicker. These are kind of important decisions for them to make. If they choose the conventional, from what we've been seeing, they're going to meet our limit, so there shouldn't be a concern on the 1118.1. But if they choose other processes, as with most of the projects, they would come in and talk to us, engineering, et cetera, on where those challenges are being met. If the challenges that can't be met need to be done through a rulemaking process, we'll of course react.
So I guess we'd be working with the county sanitation districts.
Mhm.
And we'd be looking at what kind of facilities start rising up to meet this demand.
Right, like like for example, like the city of Los Angeles right now is actually looking at things like composting, residential composting projects. So, and they currently have a pilot program, occurring, and then they are looking at ways of, ramping that up. And again, that's going to have its own, issues, right? So creating a large composting facility. I think Orange County, they're also looking at that as well. There's methods that are going on there. They're going to have a closed system. They'll need to have that permitted, et cetera. So we'll have those clues in advance.
Okay, any other questions?
Madam Chair, you have public comment?
All right. So we have, David, I would expect you to talk about this,
So,
as I just mentioned.
Mayor Mitchell,
Agency. Yes.
since we ran over a decent bit in mobile source, and since we have tech at 12,
Yeah,
I'd
wanna
recommend
limit
that
this?
we give everybody 3 minutes for items 1 through 8, and they can allocate it as long as they want.
Is that,
We will do our best.
Those are written reports.
are there other ones you want to speak on besides?
1 and 2,
You want to speak on?
but I
one
think
and two?
total we could do 3 minutes each, and also,
Do you want to wait until the presentation on 2 is done?
yes, please.
All right,
So if you give me 2 minutes, I think I could do it for this first item.
all right. So
He wants
why don't
to,
we do presentation on 2 and then, or do you want to go ahead and do? your
Please, if I
present-
could comment on
you wanna
item
now?
1, I could provide comments in 2 minutes, and then have another minute for the other item.
Okay, so 2 minutes on this one, and
Yes.
then we'll give you 1 minute on the other one. All right.
Thank you. Good morning, I'm David Rothbart, and I'm the Air Quality Committee Chair for the Southern California Alliance of Publicly Owned Treatment Works. Thank you for the presentation and working with stakeholders. First, I'd like to clarify that wastewater treatment plants attempt to beneficially use all biogas generated from digesters to generate electricity or clean fuels rather than flaring. As essential public service, we must treat 100% of the sewage discharged from homes and businesses. If our beneficial use processes require repairs or maintenance, we must continue to manage the biogas generated from sewage treatment processes. Accordingly, biogas flares are needed to reliably manage biogas under any unforeseen situation. Our concerns have been focused around maintaining the ability to provide safe and reliable treatment for the communities we serve. More specifically, the combination of restrictive flare emission limits and accepting increasing amounts of food waste could negatively impact the operation of our flares. While we appreciate staff's efforts to work with stakeholders, the underlying problem is that SB 1383's requirements are not enforceable until January 1st, 2022. As a result, food waste diversion to wastewater treatment plant digesters has been minimal to date. With minimal amounts of food waste diversion, none of the wastewater treatment plants in South Coast can be assessed at this time. Some digesters outside of South Coast accepting high-strength organic waste have been unable to achieve their flare NOx limits due to the inability to assess the impacts of 1383 locally. We recommend staff be directed to continue working with stakeholders and to report back to the State Area Source Committee within a year. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, some things I've been wondering about. Okay. Well, next we have speaker Steve Jepson. And do you want to speak on more than one item?
I do, I wish to speak on 1 and 2. Can
Do
wait.
you want to divide your time between the 2 of them?
Yeah, I think,
3 minutes per total, so do you want to do 2 minutes on this one?
yes.
All right.
Hi, my name's Steve Jepson, the Executive Director for the Southern California Alliance of Publicly Owned Treatment Work. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. I have a few brief comments on this, and primarily, if you'll reflect back on the resolution that accompanied this rule, there was to do a study in participation with Cal Recycle, CAPCOA, CASA, and SCAP. And the conclusions that are presented today, while they are accurate, they could be misleading, and they don't represent our entity's participation in the conclusions. And specifically, on one of the closing slides, South Coast AQMD facilities conducting food waste digestion currently meet NOx limits. Well, that's an accurate statement, but as David mentioned, we've only been piloting food waste, very small additions, and we haven't had the full effect of 1383 and AB 126, which is also a food waste on a controlling bill. So our request is that we have more opportunity to collaboratively complete the study and have agreed upon conclusions among all the stakeholders that are presented to the Station Resource Committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Harvey submitted a revised one, so that now addresses 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Okay. So, this one, this is an old one from Harvey. Okay.
Yes.
Harvey, you would have 3 minutes on 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can divide them up, or do you want to get up and speak on all of them now, or you can?
This is the recycle, I mean, the county's going to the board.
You want 1 minute on number 1?
Yeah,
Okay.
I might.
So you'll have 1 minute on number 1, and then we'll call in.
Okay, this is a methane problem. Instead of using 20, which the district to global warming potential, the new numbers are 86. Also, radiators forcings increased from 25% from 48 to 60. Also, this is fracked, and it was 105 on a basis of 20, so that has to be 5.25 times 86 is like 4,500 plus 1 1/4, 6,700, and then a fracked is 105 based on 20. So you're up 500, 6, 7, 800 just on methane. That's CO2 equivalent. It's totally ignored by you folks, and not dealt with as our response to the Solar New Deal to resolve it. So, and also, Department of Recycle, they could do things like taking out, we invented the beer can solar collector at UC 50 years ago. And you get steam, 300-400 degrees, and it works, and we build a system at the university.
Thank you, Harvey. Thank you. Okay. That's all the cards I have. No one else wants to speak on this item. All right. We're going to move on to the next presentation. Thank you very much, Mike. Alfonso
Thank you, and good morning.
For item number 2.
Okay, thanks. Yes, I'll start right into the background. Mike covered most of this background and the reason why we're doing directed to do the resolutions under BACT. It was the concern by stakeholders that BACT NOx limits might be exceeded due to the ammonia in the fuel stream, biogas stream, which is why the conclusion was to do a BACT tech assessment. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mike. And anyways, and report back to the committee, which we're here right now. So, the language of the resolution actually directed staff as part of the tech assessment to look into the scientific literature that's been published on this topic, measures and methods for ammonia, what technology actually has been used in practice, who has done it out there, who is experiencing these type of issues, and reliability of the players in meeting our BACT NOx limits, and what type of fuel testing we've done to see whether this is in fact happening in our area. This right here represents our search of literature that's out there that we found. I mean, regarding the effects of ammonia on gas streams and on combustion. And I'd like to direct your attention to that one paper that's in the square. This is the one that really applies to what we're talking about. That paper was published and was presented at a recent conference regarding the effects of ammonia-laden digester gas and the effects it had on the NOx emission limits, which is a good paper that we looked at, and it has a lot of those case studies that we reviewed in our assessment. The measurement methods that are currently in existence to measure ammonia in the biogas stream are AQMD method 207.1, which measures the ammonia in any gas stream. through a impinger train with sulfuric acid. And Bay Area also has a similar source test, similar to ours, that is in place to be done to test ammonia in the biogas stream. Local review. In the additional slides, I'll be talking about why we're making this statement that staff did not identify any issues on flares exceeding their NOx BACT limits in digester operations that do either part co-digestion of organic waste and the ones that do 100% organic waste. And of course, staff recognizes that this could change in the future as we proceed in the future with compliance of SB 1393, the expansion of these sites, the modifications, the new construction could have an impact. And we're aware of that. We like to follow that and monitor. It was good to work with David Rothbard and Steve Jepson. They're really helpful in working staff in doing this survey. One of the things we like to see is we want to do is go out, reach out to the actual industry, saying, okay, what have you folks experienced? What is your experience with digestion, with co-digestion, with organic waste? Put together a survey that was sent out in April of last year to all the facilities in our area, in the South Coast AQMD. And the survey really asked what kind of digestion do you do? What is high temperature, low temperature? What's your experience with organic waste and ammonia? And as you can see, this is a summary of the results we got. 2 facilities could digest municipal organic waste, probably more than that now. 3 facilities, as Mike identified, are using the high temperature digestion process. But of those 3, none of them are having issues with their flares due to ammonia because of the low co-digestion of organic waste. Most of them, for the most part, they do add and blend fat, oil, and grease that is recovered from restaurants into their feedstock, which increases their overall gas generation. Right now, our current rules do not require these facilities to do ammonia testing. They didn't. No, right now they don't require. That's why it's been a good study to find out and go out, which later on I'll mention why we did a study on ammonia. And of course, like it was mentioned, most facilities, as you indicated, have plans. Gotta have plans to comply with SB 1393 in the coming years. So we're aware of that. Of the facilities in our district, we wanted to zero in on those facilities that actually are doing the most organic waste digestion. Besides the POTWs that do public wastewater digestion, we identified these permitted facilities in our area that actually are doing, if not 100%, a large percentage of their digestion feedstock is organic waste. The first one is R&R. You can see Ralph's by far is the one that I'll focus on later on that does exclusively food digestion operation. And the other ones, Pellicurs, they're on our area. We visited. None of these folks had any issues with ammonia. None of them are required to do ammonia testing, and their flares were in compliance. This is the one that wanted to zero in on, the Ralph's grocery store. They what they do is they have a unique, incompetent, unique digester operation where all of Ralph's grocery store chains, all the vegetables, fruits, and everything that gets spoiled, they bring them to this facility and they feed them into their digester and generate biogas, which they use to generate electricity on site. We thought that this facility, of all the facilities in the South Coast, represents the one facility that is using 100% organic waste to digest and make biogas. And we thought, well, since they were scheduled to do their own compliance test, we approached them. So listen, I know you folks are not required to do ammonia test. We'd like to work with you in also doing ammonia to see what kind of ammonia you are experiencing in your biogas. We did, and the results indicate that they were at a low 18.4 ppm ammonia. Their digester is a low temperature type, which of course doesn't have that magic mix of high temperature with high protein organic waste that would cause ammonia. And of course, their NOx emissions were within the BACT limits. Outside the AQMD, we recognize that there is an issue out there now with these facilities that are unique in the way they do co-digestion or digestion, high temperature, thermal hydrolysis, all this, that they are experiencing high ammonia levels in their biogas that's causing issues with their flare emissions. These are the ones that Mike got into details, but each one of these has their own unique operation that really I can say none of these operations we can see are here in the South Coast. from the East Bay, which in essence got a state permit to be like a rendering facility. That's what they can, a third of their feedstock is like blood and meat, which is a very high protein waste. So all these are very unique type of operations that have been having issues, but the one that we identified at the end, which is the one in Salt Lake City, Utah, they are a traditional POTW wastewater treatment facility. They did do a ammonia test, and it was very low, and less than 5 ppm, and they have no issues with their flare NOx emissions. They're under the BACT limits. And as I said, these are very unique, not common in our district. We also looked at cost and potential control technologies to mitigate. Let's say you do have ammonia in your biogas stream. What can you do to mitigate or control that ammonia? There are technologies out there that can be applied. For example, the wet scrubber, absorption bed, and catalytic oxidation. We feel that the chemical wet scrubber is the one technology that's more efficient, and it can do the better job in removing ammonia from the biogas stream. And in fact, we were able to obtain cost data that was done by 2 consultants up in the Bay Area, one for the South Bay facility and one for the Z-Way, zero emission facility up in San Jose. And they did provide cost, but it was only a design and manufacture cost. They didn't provide the installation cost because it was never installed. We used EPA cost methodology to estimate the total cost it would cost to install the system based on the reductions. And based on that, we estimated that the total cost per ton for NOx reduced is within our AQMD BACT cost effectiveness limits. So when that issue does start happening in our area, we have to look at what control technology is available and is cost effective under our own regulations and BACT limits that we can apply and use, rather than first go ahead and just issue a higher limit. And observations in the South Coast. There is, we believe that there is a need to look at, and we anticipate that in the future, perhaps organic co-digestion will increase. Again, SB 1383. Staff did identify any flare NOx non-compliance issues related to ammonia and the biogas. Other sites, we can't say that. Other sites, we have information that shows that ammonia and biogas has resulted in their flare emissions, NOx emissions being higher. Air districts are currently evaluating those BACT limits, and in some cases, some of these air districts have, in fact, gone ahead and increased their limit. We are more strict on that. We have to follow our rules and regulations. So when that becomes an issue in our district, we'll be looking at it. And recommendations, we believe that we still need to continue and monitor, as Mike indicated, the expansion of the industry as we move forward with the compliance SB 1383, and see what local organic and food waste digestion projects come up, are developed. And the next steps in regards to BACT is we're going to be presenting this in our agenda at the next upcoming BACT Scientific Review Committee, which is scheduled for February 25th. And we'll be sending out a meeting notice today that we're having a meeting, and this will be one on our agenda. And we commit to work with the POTWs and with them and seeing what their experience is going to be in the coming months and years in meeting the mandates of this Senate bill. And as we move along, we'll have to revisit BACT limits and evaluate what we can do to come in compliance. And that's my presentation.
All right, we'll take our speakers next. We have Steve Jepson, and you will have 1 minute.
Terrific. Once again, Steve Jepson with SCAP. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. And before we get too far along, I do want to thank the South Coast staff for being terrific to work with on these 2 initiatives. We're concerned here that the ammonia controls described haven't been truly tested in practice in a public works facility or a wastewater facility. So to conclude that they would be reliable or cost effective is a little bit of a stretch, we feel. We'd like to be more involved in that discussion and research. The other concern is over the costs, and while some EPA guidelines were used to generate the costs, we have in our group of stakeholders, we have very good familiarity with the true costs of delivering projects and operating projects in Southern California. We want to have an opportunity to review and participate more in those costs. I also want to point out quickly that the food treatment examples provided in the presentation, I'm sure that is accurate. However, what we're going to be facing as SB 1383 and 186 are implemented, more mixed food waste, more protein, and not a specific source that can be targeted in the design. And we won't be able to control the rate in the feed as well in our wastewater systems as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and David, you can come up. 1 minute.
Hi, I'm David Rothbart, representing SCAP. Just to supplement what Steve is talking about, I think really everyone agrees that this is an unknown. Right now, we're not taking a lot of food waste at any digesters, and we do know from Northern California there is at least one plant, I think there's 4 actually throughout the United States, that have higher limits than we have on our existing flares here, and you have a situation where people are not able to achieve their limits. The dilemma we have, what we're asking for some type of way of move forward is no one's going to want to put forth the investment into digesting food waste if they don't know if they could achieve the requirements. So like the Bay Area, there is a facility that had a flare, they failed their source test, and they had a violation, and they spent a lot of time and effort trying to undo that. So that's what's going on now. But no one's going to invest a lot of money unless they know they could comply. So at least the ask here would be if we could come back to the stationary source and have some type of mutual understanding of how to proceed without having folks getting violation, because we want that infrastructure to put in place. Thank you.
Thank you. And Harvey, I'm going to mention that because you want to speak on all the items, I'm going to.
I don't want to speak on this, so
Do you want to speak on this one?
yes.
So I'll give you 1 minute on this one, and then we'll reserve 2 more minutes for everything else.
Well, me take more. Anyway.
I'll do 1 minute. Do 1 minute on this, and then we'll have 2 minutes left for all the rest.
Okay.
All right.
Harvey Eder, ditto. We got a problem. This is natural gas. This is methane. I just said the problems we got with methane, that it's at least as big as carbon dioxide and maybe twice as big. And it's being ignored, okay? We're choosing our fuel now. With waste from food, if we can do it on the fields and stuff without the emissions from methane, we should do it that way. We got to look at the bigger system, and also with the tree waste and all this thing from the fires. 150 years ago, Edison and stuff was saying, "Oh, we put in windmills, do solar," and they did all, and they ignored it. With Rockefeller, they chose fossil fuels, and we got big problems now. It's got to be done the other way. We're choosing the fuel now. You're choosing the wrong fuel. You're choosing natural gas. Again, your trucks, all this stuff is garbage. You got to take the big picture. This was done 150 years ago. Savant Arrhenius, Greta's father's first name is Savant. They're related to this guy. He ran Nobel for 20 years and had the second Nobel in chemistry. Kept Mendeleev, who was Hebrew, from getting Nobel when he invented the periodic table of chemicals. You know, this is outrageous. It's happening again. 150 years later.
Thank you, Harvey. Your time is up, and we'll look for you for the next items when we go through them. So, thank you very much for the presentation. Let me say on this that as we are ramping up, I know from my municipal experience that no cities are recycling organic waste. Manhattan Beach in my community is one that is sort of on a pilot program with Alexandria. So this is going to be a big deal. And so we have to work out this pretty carefully with the facilities that are going to do this anaerobic digestion or the flaring or whatever. And I agree with the sand districts to put a huge investment in for wet scrubbers without knowing whether it's actually gonna comply is a problem. So I urge our staff to work with them, maybe establish some kind of pilot program or demo so we can see what the actual results are before we put in a rule that requires everybody to do it. And we have willing participants here who wanna work with us, so, and these are big LA Sand District, one of the biggest probably in the state of California that's doing this kind of work, so, urge you to, cooperate with the facilities that are gonna have to face these recycling challenges. Okay,
We'll figure something out.
all right, did anyone else come? No, I'm still the only one. I have full control here. Okay, we'll go to item 3, and we have Michael Wallace here.
Good morning. I'll be presenting on our Rule 1107, that's our metal coatings rule. Very briefly, the rule was last amended in 2006, and recently we were contacted by the US EPA and asked to update the rule to be consistent with their control techniques guideline. Basically, it has a reasonably available control technology requirements in there, and as an air district that's in non-attainment, we're required to do that as soon as practical. As we open the rule, CARB also made a couple of requests, and I'll go through what those requests are. The Air Resources Board asked us to update our limits for baked metallic and baked camouflage coatings. And then the EPA asked us to look at some of our work practices, remove the high volume exemptions, and update the test methods. While we were in the rule, we also clarified and removed some obsolete language. All of those essentially take care of the requests that EPA made. And in all of these cases, these are technologies that have existed for 2 decades. They're widely used already. We don't expect them to impact any of the facilities, and nor will they be any costs. While we had the rule open during the public workshop, we got 2 excellent suggestions from our stakeholders. One was to include ASTM 7767 for energy curable coatings, and we have included that in the rule. One of the issues that has arisen from that is that while it is available for manufacturers to use for testing their materials, and it's a very accurate test method in that sense, it doesn't necessarily work as well for field samples because there are blockers or inhibitors in the products themselves that we can't test, and you have to know exactly how much of those materials are in there in order to have an accurate sample result. Without that information, we can't do that. So it's available for the manufacturers, but not necessarily for us. The other thing that we got a request from our stakeholders was to exempt high viscosity coatings from our transfer efficiency. Those are very thick coatings that are, the only way that they'd be able to comply with that is to add VOC thinner to that and essentially counter what we're trying to do. So we're including that exemption as well. This rule is going before the board in February. We were dark in December, so we didn't have an opportunity to present then. But with that, I'm available for questions.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any questions. Pretty straightforward, and no one else is here to ask, so we'll go to public comment. And we have Rita. Rita, who I believe will be happy today.
Joe.
Kind of, sort of. Is this the only thing
Kinda,
you're going
sorta.
to testify on? That is the only thing I'm going to testify on. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning. Rita Luth, Director of Environmental Affairs for RADTEC International. I've been with RADTEC for 26 years, and the association was dealing with the issue of testing our materials before my time. Our materials are all electric processes, extremely low in VOC, so much so that traditional methods for VOC products do not pick up the very low VOC levels in our materials. We have a test method that was approved by EPA for our thicker materials, but the district and EPA could not develop a test method for thin film materials, which, to give you some perspective, are about 1/4 the diameter of a human hair in thickness. We were assured by the district that if we got a method approved by ASTM, which is recognized as the expert entity on test methods, we could get our method recognized by the agency. In 2011, our method was approved by ASTM as a reliable way to measure VOCs. While we have made progress in including our method, here we are in 2020, and the ASTM method has still not been fully recognized by the district. D7767 is currently recognized in the definition section of the rule. All we would like is for it to be listed in the test methods section of the rule, where we think it belongs. On slide 5 of the staff presentation, they indicate that they will continue to work with the industry in developing a procedure for field samples, and we appreciate that. But it reminds me of the lyrics to an old U2 song. How long must we sing this song? To date, there is no better method by anyone. We do not think that kicking the can down the road is appropriate. We provided a field procedure 8 to 10 years ago, way before Mike's time on this rule. And if not our method, which method will the district use for enforcement purposes? There is language under the multiple test methods section that allows the district to select any method for enforcement and issue violations. We're very concerned about that. As we've heard during prior Stationary Source Committee meetings, testing costs can be significant. Some of our companies have thousands of products, and one company reported if they had to retest every product, it would cost them over $9 million. So we believe that this type of confusing language puts our industry at risk of enforcement, and our members would like closure on this issue. All we're asking is for the staff language that's there now to be moved into the test methods section for test methods, where we think it belongs. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Anyone else on this? We've got Harvey, we're gonna take them to the end. So, let me just ask staff about this issue that seems to be coming back from time to time. And we know they do a product that is very environmentally safe and beneficial. So could you respond to her claim?
Certainly. So, as you mentioned, their products are very low VOC, and generally, whatever test method we use will provide a low VOC result. So currently, we use EPA method 24 for that type of product, and it'll have a low result. There may be some permit issues. I think I've heard that in the past from them, but as far as the rules concerned, their products, the low VOCs, are not going to have any trouble with the types of limits that we have. As far as the actual field procedure and being able to do that, like I mentioned, they have blockers in the product in order to, and that's how they're formulated. But we don't have that information on how much the blockers are. And that's an integral part of the ASTM method to know exactly how much is in that product. Without that information, we're not able to do a field sample. We're trying to compromise by including that in the definitions and allowing the manufacturers to utilize that to provide that information to us. But as far as a field sample goes, we rely on our current methods, and they provide us enough information for us to determine compliance.
And because she was worried about the risk of violation in an enforcement proceeding because of the way we're doing things. Can you comment on that?
So like I said, most of those products are very low VOC, far below any levels that we have in the rule. There may be some permit issues, and I think in that case, I think if a permit requires a certain low level of VOC far below whatever we have in our Rule 1107, they should state what test method is required in order to demonstrate that. But as far as the rule is concerned, the test methods that we utilize right now will certainly show whether or not the product's in compliance because they're so low to begin with as initially.
So there's a risk, but you would assess it as a very low risk.
It's a risk associated with the permit, not with the rule.
Okay. All right, well, we keep getting this, so I know we want to be, treat this product in a way that is fair and that encourages the use of the product, so.
Understood.
Okay, Thank you very much, and we're gonna move on to, item 4, resource review. Harvey, do you wanna speak now? You have 1 minute left. You can speak now,
Yeah,
you're gonna be speaking
now.
on, you won't get another chance. So if you wanna speak on this one, you won't get another chance.
Okay. Harvey, ditto. Control technology guidelines. We've been trying for 20 years to get control technology guidelines, evaluation done on solar. Y'all have failed this in all the state and feds. It's illegal. You've never done this. If you have, show it to me. I've never seen it. Also, for alternate control technology, never been done. Not just purged, never studied. Just like we didn't get to present our stuff in court, we weren't even allowed to file in court. Same kind of crap happening here. Okay, came here 35 years ago, put solar in some apartment houses in the 80s, and the guy ordered a metal coating plant. He was doing like coating of chairs and whatnot. We wanted to heat the water, okay, so I had some knowledge and experience of this. You got to use these other technologies. Anyway, it goes back to choosing your fuels again. And it's, 150 years ago, we're trying to choose again, and we got to keep away from fossil fuels and natural gas, so-called renewable.
Thank you, Harvey.
You got to study it. Somebody tell me, where is this? It's outrageous.
Thank you, Harvey.
I'd like to get a response from staff in writing.
And we have one more item on the agenda, it's item 4. This is a review on the resource review, which we've been dealing with, and David Ono has a report for us.
Good morning. My name is David Ono. I'm the Senior Engineering Manager in the Engineering and Permitting Division. I give a status report on our Reg 13. Just some background on news source review and in this particular requirement. This report is to demonstrate our ongoing equivalency with the federal requirements, federal news source review requirements, as required by EPA. And we report twice to the board, once in February and once in September. In February, we do the preliminary determination of equivalency, and then in September, we do the final determination. So this is for the preliminary determination. Some additional background, we've been performing the status report since 1990, and in 2002, around 2004, EPA requested that we formalize how we do our equivalency demonstrations, and Rule 1315 was adopted for that purpose, and in 2006, 2007, and subsequently revised in February from 2011. EPA approved our 1315 into the SIP, and it was effective in 2012. So Rule 1315 establishes the procedures which we follow in order to demonstrate equivalency for the offset's requirements. We track the debits from our internal accounts as well as the credits. For the preliminary determination, to be conservative, we just take the debits and not collect the credits. The credits we validate over the course of the next period for our final determination in order to show that we are below, we have a positive balance in our accounts. So we are in continuing equivalency. We have positive balances across the board for all of the criteria pollutants as shown in the table here. And we also do a projection of the offset accounts in order to stay ahead of the curve to ensure that we maintain our equivalency with the federal requirements. And so we do it for the next 2 periods. That would be for calendar year 2019 as well as calendar year 2020. So this shows the 2019 balances, they're all positive, and the 2020 balances, which continue to be positive. So our projections as well as our current status shows that we are in equivalency, and we are projected to continue to stay in that status. What this here shows, the next chart is with the historical perspective. You can see that for VOC we have quite a bit of a cushion, and for the other criteria pollutants we are maintaining our levels. So, final conclusion, our preliminary determination shows that we are continuing to be equivalent with the federal requirements for offsets, and our projections continue to show that we expect to stay in that state. Our final determination will be presented in the September board meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Looks good. It's about the same as last year, and the year before. Okay, thank you very much. And then we have written reports, items 5, 6, and 7. Is there any other business to come before the committee? And now we have public comment, and Barbie could have 3 minutes.
It's up to you, Madam Chair.
Barbie may have 3 minutes because we still have some time before our next meeting begins.
Good morning, or is it good afternoon? I'm Harvey Etter. I'm speaking for myself and for the Public Solar Power Coalition, and 80–90% of people that want to see a just, equitable solution to our climate extinction problems, burning fossil fuels for 200–300 years. And to go back to this concept that I mentioned of you break it, you buy it. It's a legal concept, okay? Also, we chose this path as a culture. We had one of our foremost inventors, Thomas Edison was quoted as saying that we ought to be using solar. That is the ultimate. And in the 1880s, he was putting in wind systems. That's solar. It's indirect solar, and this was crushed. I mentioned something about the guy that ran this savant, Arrhenius, an ancestor of Thornburg's. Her father's first name is Savant, okay? They ran the Nobel. He got, in 2003, the second prize for chemistry. In the 1880s, they measured from burning coal, carbon up there, and he said it's heating the atmosphere. We know this is happening. They went and chose fossil fuels anyway, all right? You're making the same mistake here. You're pushing like your trucks. What are they? They're natural gas. The so-called renewable. It's garbage. You're not looking at the negative impacts, the body counts from putting out PM, other emissions, benzene, formaldehyde, and all this. You're not doing your job, and you're not looking at the big picture. And it's happened, the second time in several hundred years, and we got a chance maybe to survive. But with this kind of approach, we're not gonna. I talked about this fund, a balancing fund, taking the monies from fossil fuel companies. They broke it. Okay, it needs to be put in. How's that? Like the example they gave when economist Samuelson criticized the $7 trillion proposal of BlackRock and how it ought to be done. That's incorporated in the record here. This is something we got to get on and look at and work on right now. I mean, we're in a bad situation. They're saying that in the next 10 years we have developing countries 7.6% change each year compounded, and for developed countries 10 to 15%. It's pretty intense. We got to do this. This is what we're up against. Okay. We need a systemic approach to this. I was the first registered environmental studies student in the University of California in this state in 1970. And I got a perspective. I worked on solar renewables since the early 70s, started the first co-op in Santa Cruz, and that San Jose is looking at this 5 million customers working with the governor. I've been taking over PG&E co-ops in the state.
Thank you, Harvey. And that concludes the business for the meeting today. We will adjourn to our next meeting on February 21st at 10:30 a.m.